But when we get back, you're going to have all 212 Democrats vote for the release of these Epstein files, and you're going to get a fair amount of Republicans vote for that.
A few moments later.
Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
So the whole Epstein issue continues to backfire on Democrats, and I can't say I'm surprised. After all, this is the same political party who spent the entire past year screaming at the Trump administration to release the files, thinking it would somehow prove that Trump and Epstein were BFFs who were diddling kids and having these sex parties together, despite the fact that clearly even the known evidence throughout the years shows the opposite. But if you were still skeptical, the file releases actually confirm the opposite. I would argue that essentially one of the big conclusions as it pertains to Trump and other people from the Epstein files is that Epstein was basically friendly with the entire global elite besides Donald Trump. You notice that Trump, whenever he's mentioned in the Epstein files, seems to be a guy that Jeffrey exclusively and quite particularly had a disliking for, and the feeling there was mutual, right? And Democrats tried to use this too. They tried to say, oh, look, well, look at the Michael Wolff emails. Epstein said that Trump is the worst person I know. Look, that proves that Trump is evil. And it's like, your source on morality is Jeffrey Epstein? Actually, if Jeffrey Epstein or Joseph Stalin or whoever it is saying that person is a bad guy, doesn't inherently make them a good guy, sure, but it probably gives them a benefit of the doubt that this person, this very bad guy, hates, in this case, Donald Trump for a reason. So we're seeing that evidence. Now, this week, ABC News has been forced to acknowledge stories that may confirm, in fact, it was Trump originally who took down Epstein to begin with, which further is corroborated by different interviews, different pieces of evidence that have been seen throughout the years. Again, Democrats, you're just wrong about this issue, which is, of course, leading to quite a hilarious reaction where they're essentially now trying to say, after screaming to release the files, right? Release the files, release the files. Now the excuse is, the files are fake. I don't believe it. No, something must be wrong here. No, you wanted to have the files released. The files are being released. They're making you look stupid. Just accept it. No, no, no. Surely it must be fake. Surely it must be a conspiracy theory. Surely dozens of different emails and texts showing that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump didn't get along. It's all a fabricated conspiracy by Pam Bondi or something. It's just so ridiculous. And then, as if it couldn't get even worse, I cannot make this up, we now even have Democrats calling for, actually criticizing the Trump administration for now releasing too many of the Epstein files. I can't make that. These people were saying, release them all. We want to see them all. Now they're saying, why'd you release them all? That was actually really bad. It's so ridiculous. It's stupid. Nonetheless, we'll tell you about this here today, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, as it pertains to Epstein, I'd like to start today's video by sharing you a new finding from ABC News of all sources who have been forced to admit that a former police chief who investigated Jeffrey Epstein in the mid-2000s told the FBI that he had received a call from Donald Trump at the time to say, quote, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everybody has known he's been doing this," according to an FBI account. So in other words, Trump was very happy that Epstein was taken down even before he, had to defend himself from being implicated in anything. We'll tell you more details about this in a second, but I first of all just want to show you, for example, how liberals are responding to this. Because if you look at the comment section, for instance, on Instagram, it's basically a long list of them just calling the entire thing fake. Oh no, that didn't happen. It couldn't have been real. No, you guys are the ones who called to release the files, and we need to see everything that's in them. Okay? You were obsessed with this. So you cannot now respond to the files by simply saying they were fake because they clearly prove you wrong. That's a ridiculous thought exercise, but of course, we know from the beginning, as I've been saying about Epstein, that liberals are entirely disingenuous about this. They don't care about the Epstein files. They don't care what's in it, okay? If they did, they'd probably realize that a lot of their political and cultural heroes and icons are very closely implicated in this stuff. But no, the entire point was maybe just some hope that because Epstein and Trump once knew each other, maybe something will be there. But even when evidence says the contrary, we're just going to still call Trump a pedophile and, post these repeated pictures to try to prove our point. And yet here is the reality. Take a listen to this newest report about what Trump actually thought of Epstein as early back as the early 2000s, right? We're not talking about in 2015, 2016, suddenly he disassociated. No, this is prior to his first ever sexual conviction. Take a listen.
This morning, a new document coming to light claims in the mid-2000s, President Trump called police about Jeffrey Epstein. Among the 3 million Epstein files released by the Department of Justice last month is a 4-page FBI report on an interview the Bureau conducted in 2019 with the man believed to be former Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder. Ryder and his detectives began investigating Epstein for human trafficking in 2004. According to the document, Trump called Ryder around that time and said, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this." Ryder also says Trump said he threw Epstein out of his club, and he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Trump got the hell out of there. The former police chief says Trump told him to focus on Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, saying she is evil.
Did you have any suspicions that he was molesting young women, underage women?
I had no idea.
Trump has long denied having any knowledge of Epstein's crimes, but Ryder says Trump was one of the very first people to call when people found out that they were investigating Epstein.
Right, and of course, this is the news that liberals are responding to by decrying that, no, surely this must be fake. We can't believe that. The Trump administration planted this or something. All of the dumbest, most ridiculous conspiracy theories. And keep in mind, these are the same people who think that if there's an accusation of something happening in the Epstein files, which, keep in mind, some of those documents are unsubstantiated, right? They're just claims that never went to court because they couldn't be proven. If it relates to someone that liberals don't like, they say that's 100% proof of just, hey, there's an affidavit, someone accused someone of something, it never went to court. Okay, fine. But when you have, for example, law enforcement sources just simply documenting things for the sake of documentation, right? Hey, the police, the FBI, they were recording, hey, this is what happened, this is what Donald said. No, surely they're just lying, right? Surely back in the 2000s, some time traveler, knowing that Trump was going to be president and he wanted to protect the PDF in chief or whatever they're going to say, he intentionally told the FBI, hey, Donald Trump called me and said thank you, and let's plant that in the Epstein files, and then 20 years later, it's going to come out and make Trump look good, but in reality, it was a hoax. Donald Trump never called me. You understand the layers you have to do to try to say that whole story is fake is, of course, utterly ridiculous. But folks, for those of you who paid attention to the Epstein situation from the beginning back in 2018 to 2019 and are just not pretending to care about this yesterday for political points, the truth is none of this should be surprising. Because even back then, conservatives and just people who cared about this issue but were honest about it were, of course, pointing out the way in which it was always clear, right? These files shouldn't be surprising to you because it was always clear that Epstein, yes, was friendly with a lot of the global elite. The circle there went very wide. And yes, it obviously included people like Bill Gates and Bill Clinton. That's well known, but there are many others, right? But uniquely, one guy that always hated Donald Trump was Jeffrey Epstein, and then vice versa. So, that's of course the case. And it doesn't even stop there. We may have evidence, in fact, that Trump was an FBI informant on the Epstein situation the entire time and may have been responsible in taking him down, not just in 2019, obviously, when he was president overseeing the Department of Justice, but even back in 2006, stemming to his initial conviction. Take a listen.
Trump was one of the very first people to call when people found out they were investigating Epstein. No one could explain how Epstein made his money. Prince Andrew was a fixture in Palm Beach. So Jeffrey Epstein thought that Trump ratted him out. Epstein came to believe that it was Trump who had first caused him to be investigated by the law enforcement in 2005. This is also one from 2016.
Bill Clinton. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. The island was an absolute cesspool.
He has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming Yes.
Unbecoming. He was a sex offender.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being polite, in the sense that he was a sex offender.
But you were staying at the house of
Yes.
a convicted sex offender.
He's not in the clear, but what it was showing is that before any public scrutiny occurred, Donald Trump expressed concern about Epstein directly to the authorities. It seemed pretty obvious to me that Donald Trump and Epstein were pretty close at one point. It's very hard really for me to say that, you know, like this guy's totally innocent, but at the same time, whenever you're the guy that's ratting this person out before anything ever happens publicly, then I do think that looks very good on you privately. I think it absolutely does.
Now, it's not exactly clear to what degree Trump helped to take down Epstein in the early 2000s. Epstein, it's worth noting, certainly did believe so. He was in some of those files and some of those emails ranting he thought Trump is the one who ratted him out, right? And it's very hard to argue when Trump was doing this and saying this as far back as the early 2000s, yet you still have Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Stacey Plaskett, a bunch of these different people are still communicating with and still hanging out with Epstein all the way up until essentially the moment that he went down in the late 2010s, that anything here is the same, right? As I said again, there does seem to be this very unique case where there's that one guy in the elite, right, in that circle who didn't want to associate with Epstein, was trying to take down Epstein. His name was Donald Trump, okay? He also, of course, went on to further say that he wanted to tell law enforcement to also look into Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And this is before anyone really in the general public knew who Jeffrey Epstein was. This is not something that, oh, Trump just felt he's not, that's not the Prince Andrew story, right? Where suddenly now he needs to apologize. Now he needs to back away because there's so much public scrutiny. No, way back before Epstein got convicted of anything, before anything was kind of publicly known or really happening, there's Trump speaking to law enforcement about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I guess liberals could try to use the excuse that, oh, well, Trump was just trying to save himself because he knew that a bunch of people were going to go down, and so he didn't want people to think he was the guilty one, to which I say, I mean, okay, I guess that's possible. I don't know. It also kind of contradicts the fact that, okay, so why wasn't Bill Clinton acting like this? Or Bill Gates? Or Prince Andrew? Or any of Epstein's other friends? Why weren't they also trying to save their skin by saying, hey, you know, let's cut a deal, I have information? You would think that would be the case, but no, it seems that his actual friends continue to still hang out with and associate with him. So, you know, I think, frankly, you can believe that theory, but that's all that it is. It's a conspiracy theory, right? The public record, what we do know, again, does seem to show Trump intentionally and deliberately tried to help law enforcement and the authorities take down Jeffrey Epstein, and that's actually what the Epstein Files show, you know? A lot of people trying to say, oh, well, look at the files, Trump is guilty. You haven't read the files. You don't know anything that's in the files. That's why you're saying that, right? And what's happening here, of course, on a bigger picture is the Democrat political narrative is completely collapsing, and that's, of course, something that we also know.
New details that sharply undercut years of media and Democrat speculation and assertions about Donald Trump. Newly released FBI interview records confirm that Trump personally contacted Florida police in 2006 during the original Jeffrey Epstein investigation, and not to shield Epstein, but to support law enforcement going after him. The police chief told federal investigators that Trump was the only prominent figure who proactively reached out to assist their investigation at a time when Epstein was surrounded by powerful friends and enablers. The FBI records also reinforce longstanding reports that Epstein was barred from Mar-a-Lago after inappropriate conduct there. And there is more. Additional documents show Democratic Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett communicated with Epstein using a fake name, presumably to shield herself from scrutiny. Reports indicate Plaskett used a pseudonym while exchanging messages with Epstein in connection with official matters, raising new questions as more names surface in the expanding Epstein document release.
Yeah, and some details worth noting there too. First and foremost, Donald Trump was the only prominent person in Palm Beach or this elite circle that Epstein was constantly trying to influence who reached out proactively ahead of time. Law enforcement didn't have to contact him. He contacted law enforcement to basically tell them, hey, you need to go after Epstein. I agree with it. Look into Ghislaine. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to cooperate, etc., etc. Which, I'll say again, heavily undercuts the possible theory that liberals keep on spreading that, hey, maybe Trump was trying to save his own skin. Because if it's true that a lot of people were in on this, and hey, the billionaires, the elite, all that, then it begs the question why Trump was the only one who did that, right? Why weren't other people also trying to proactively reach out to make it seem like we were cooperating, but in reality, they were trying to save their own skin? Does it just mean that Trump is the only smart one among them? I don't think that's true. I think that actually there's a very unique reason, is because Trump and Epstein did not get along. They did not like each other. And Trump, whether he knew or not, clearly had some suspicion that something bad was going on with Epstein, and he didn't want to be associated with it. Which, of course, drags us to point number 2. The FBI is now confirming the formerly alleged but unsubstantiated reports that Donald Trump had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. This is, of course, a piece of evidence we've used for years to prove, hey, they were not on each other's side. Actually, Epstein was banned from Trump's club. There was clearly this clash, this rivalry, this feud, I guess you could say, between the two, which, again, severely undercuts the argument that Trump was in on it or friends with Epstein or getting along. No, these guys hated and despised each other. That's what the record seems to show, right? You know, you don't call the FBI about your BFF and say, yeah, I hate this guy. You should really go after him. You should you should absolutely arrest him and his girlfriend and throw them in jail. Is that what people say is that what Democrats say about their friends? I don't really know, right? Doesn't seem so to me. Now, you can speculate on the reasons that Trump and Epstein didn't get along. You know, there's like one hand, people say it's because Trump knew directly about the crimes. Others have tried to say, oh, it was something to do with business. I don't know. But the whole point is right? Your accusation has been centrally that you believe Trump and Epstein were basically running this sex offender circle together, and Trump is a guilty criminal. He's a pedophile. He's all these things. And yet, you can't even prove, first of all, that Trump and Epstein were even friendly with each other, because the whole public record of the Epstein Files post around 2000 is them despising and hating each other, which makes it a little bit hard to believe they were in on it and engaged in the same crimes together. Understand what I'm saying, right? And of course, Trump also alleged to the FBI that the moment he saw Epstein around underage girls, he got the hell out of there. That's also a detail worth noting. So that goes on. And then lastly, of course, let's talk about Democrat Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. This is the U.S. Virgin Islands representative. You may remember that whole scandal where she was texting Jeffrey Epstein as late as 2019, where Epstein is coaching her on advice to give, in terms of what to say and question in the hearing. As it pertains to basically trying to nail Donald Trump. I think that was the hearing with Michael Cohen, if I'm not mistaken, right? Okay. So we brought that up and said, look, Epstein, first of all, you have a Democrat congresswoman in 2019, not even like 2006, 2019, colluding with Jeffrey Epstein in a congressional hearing to figure out, hey, what's the dirt on Donald Trump? What bad can I give you about Donald Trump? Which, again, if Epstein and Trump were really friends, I really doubt that he'd be trying to essentially embarrass him, you know, in the context of a national hearing and saying good job and all this different stuff. But okay. We now also found out, because Stacey Plaskett tried to give the excuse to the world that, oh, well, Jeffrey Epstein was nothing more than a constituent. Bear in mind, Jeffrey was donating to her and stuff like that. But okay, Jeffrey Epstein was just a constituent, and I was just asking for this information so I could get relevant info as a prosecutor and as someone, doing a testimony and a congressional hearing and all this stuff. And then now we find out, no, Stacey clearly had to have some kind of idea of who Epstein was and what he was up to, because apparently she was using a fake name, an alias, to communicate with him, so that way she could try to hide the real story, right? Which does seem to suggest, first of all, I'd have to assume, I'd have to imagine maybe the relationship between the two was a lot closer as it pertains, and by the way, that's true of a lot of figures in the Democrat Party, Hakeem Jeffries as well, you know? That his team was constantly trying to solicit Epstein for campaign donations. Yeah, a constituent and a donor are not exactly the same thing, right? You know, you might answer a random phone call from a constituent in the office or something. Okay, you're not inviting just a constituent to your fancy fundraiser meetings and asking them to donate thousands. That's someone clearly you're a lot closer to. You know, so all of that said, I hope you get the idea by now. But yes, we are beginning to watch the narrative unravel, which is why now Democrats can't even keep their criticism straight, right? On one hand, you have some Democrats saying, oh, well, the files are still too redacted. And they, of course, said in the beginning, right, you need to release all the files, all of them. We don't care about victims or whatever. Just release everything for transparency's sake. And then suddenly now, in a hearing today with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, Democrat Representative Pramila Jayapal, anyone remember this character, is now demanding that Pam Bondi apologize for releasing too many of the Epstein files. No, I'm not making that up. After their party screaming, release the Epstein files, and some people still in this same hearing saying, you're still redacting too much, Democrats can't even keep their message or their criticism straight. Now the criticism, because I guess the truth came out and it doesn't look good for Democrats, we're now the bad guys, ladies and gentlemen, for releasing the Epstein files. Take a listen.
Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
What? That's exactly what you guys asked for. You were demanding to see the full files. Now you want Pam Bondi to apologize to the victims for releasing too much? What are you even talking about? The initial criticism, if you remember how this whole thing started, is when the Epstein files were released at the beginning of the Trump administration, Democrats heavily mocked and made fun of them for having way too many redactions and everything was blacked out. And they said, hey, look, you have to unredact the files. We want the full Epstein files. The DOJ responded by saying, well, a lot of that blacked out stuff is having to do with the victims, and that's bad. And they basically said they don't care. Okay. But I would secondly point out, they didn't just vocally demand this. Democrats in the House specifically, you guys voted in Congress. You passed a law mandating that the full Epstein files, minus certain redactions, must be released. Okay? So what happened next? The DOJ released the Epstein files as federal law mandated, right? As Congress, as your vote in Congress, your very vote mandated them to do. And now what you're saying is it's the DOJ's fault for releasing too many Epstein files. That's what you voted for, right? Now you care about the victims? Now you're saying that more stuff should have been redacted? Then why did you vote to unredact all the files? It's not even coherent. It doesn't even make any sense, guys. We're just clueless, right? I think we're as clueless, frankly, as the Democrats are. The Democrats can't even keep their criticism straight because that doesn't make any sense. This is exactly what you guys wanted. This is exactly what you guys called for. You didn't take it as a valid excuse that some of it had to be redacted. And now you're saying, why didn't you redact the files as it pertains to the victims? I don't know, Jemiah Jayapal, whatever your name is, right? Because that's what you guys asked for. Don't pass. So in other words, you passed the federal law that you screamed about in virtue signal, and you don't even know what it means. You don't even know what it says. Ridiculous. But big picture here, okay? I would like to just say that's a fantastic metaphor for the Democrat Party as it pertains to the whole Epstein issue. Release the files get released. Why did you release the files? No, there's too much truth in them about, first of all, we're lying about Trump, that's a hoax, but then secondly, a lot of our BFFs, a lot of our idols are implicated. No! This is impossible. How could this be true? Yeah, I know. It's such a big shock, right? Everyone is so surprised. But anyways, that said, though, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.